Hey guys, so we'll be playing a 15-2 on Lichess. As you can see, my opponent is rated 2236, which is a tad higher than me. I'm 2143 right now. I usually don't play such long time controls. But my brother and I, we've been watching a lot of games during the summer. We've been watching John Bartholomew, and he plays a lot of, well, he has some videos of him playing standard classical chess games, so 15-2, 15 O's sometimes. And I guess that's just the best way to improve, so I'm trying to give it a shot. So I'll just retreat here. So the opening right now is weird. I don't even know. Well, it probably has a name. I don't know the name. So now if I take the pawn here, he takes back, and then our queens are aligned to each other, and then I could force his king to move with an isolated central pawn. It sounds like a weird move, but I get the feeling that he's used to these type of positions. So I feel like I'm just walking into a trap here, but so obviously if he captures, I want to capture back so that he has to make a move with his king. Once the queens are exchanged, maybe a king in the center isn't worth that much. Okay, so he puts his queen there, he blocks his bishop here, but he doesn't have to move his king, so I guess it had some value in a sense. Now obviously my pawn is pinned to the king. So if I put my knight there, he can bring his bishop there, and then my knight will be pinned to my queen, and the next move he could take, and maybe long term he could push the pawn. I'll put my bishop there. I'm keeping my options open. So now I want to decide what to do with my king. I'm thinking at some point I want to have my bishop here, my knight here, but queen check here is coming at some point. So if I move this bishop here, let's say I put it there, then queen check could win this pawn. And one thing for sure is that this bishop here has to move at some point. And one way that they could do it is to try to give check here. Although right now all I could do is play c3 afterwards, and the queen would have to move and I'd still be fine. So I think I'll just develop normally. So he's a bit behind in development. He has trouble with his bishop here. This pawn, although he has control of the center right now, my two knights kind of work pretty efficiently in order to control some of the squares. This is an isolated pawn. The thing is that if he pushes, this knight has to retreat somewhere, some way, I could always go here if he pushes. But then, so maybe he's thinking about castling, and then his rook will be here, hitting my queen, and then if he pushes, my knight can't move. So I don't like the position of my queen right now, because it's coming pretty fast. Things that come to mind: developing the bishop. C3. C3 is interesting, so that my queen would have escape squares. It does weaken a bit the queen side. So next move here is probably knight there, then castles. So I have to do something about my queen. You know, c3, queen here. Then he could try something like g6, probably trying to put the bishop there, but also threatening at some point here the bishop there, cleaning up the file. I have to find some moves, so I'll just play this. Also, I should know that this supports d4 if my knight has to come here at some point. So now we're thinking knight c6, castles. g6 is a possibility. So g6, bishop g7. If his knight moves, I have this diagonal where I could try to give check. Although with g6 then maybe it's not so good, and also it would have been better if my bishop wasn't there, so that I could give check with my queen. Let's say if both these pieces weren't there, then I could play queen check followed by queen takes pawn, and the knight wasn't there, obviously. I like this square too. It's kind of weak. So let's say knight c6. Do I castle? Can I castle safely? So now, if I castle, e4, knight d4, knight takes. So he's gonna castle long at some point, like next move, and then my queen is gonna have to move. Now the thing is, what do I want to do with that? Do I want to wait? Do I want to do it now? Queen c2 here controls f5, and then at some point my knight could jump in. The only thing that I don't like about it is that it leaves this square here undefended. So let's say he pushes, I move, he captures, I have to take back with the pawn, and then I'm left with an isolated pawn. My queen is somewhat open. This diagonal suddenly is very open. But again, let's say he castles. So the rook is aligned here. Do I have to move it yet? Can I play some bishop move and then queen c1? I can always try queen here. Well, it seems to be bad after knight d4. Okay, so what are my candidate moves? Queen c2 is good. Castles is probably fine. Let's try queen c2. So I've used half my time already and I've made 10 moves, so I'm gonna have to speed it up a little. Otherwise it could be pretty bad. Pretty bad. So the next move is probably castles here. All of my pieces on the king side, so that's good for my king right now. But his king is way too far. So I should try to move some of the pieces on the queen side. I'd be tempted to play knight f5 for some reason, but then bishop takes, queen takes, check, king moves. His king is safe. He has perfect control of the open file. One thing that I could do is try to develop this. This is my only undeveloped piece right now. So I could try to play bishop g5 and then fight for the control of the d file. Things are going to happen pretty fast on the king side, so I'll try this instead. Chances are that my king may have to not go on the king side. Black still has troubles with his bishop. The queen has to move in order for the bishop to get developed, or he has to play g6 and then bishop g7. Although I don't think that that's a good plan, because first of all, the pawns are probably going to get pushed, as you can see. And then the bishop would be on this diagonal that looks useless for the time being. So do I want to trade now? So if I trade, then he takes back with the pawn, and then he has this file here that he can use, and also he has two connected pawns in the center. Whereas right now he only has an isolated pawn, which I would rather keep that way, quite frankly. So I'll retreat. Here, now obviously if he tries knight here, then I will probably retreat the bishop. The thing is that with the knight here, then I can play h3 with tempo on the knight, and then bishop g4 isn't an option anymore. I should note that bishop e3 does lose a tempo to knight g4 if I decide not to trade this piece, and I don't think I would. But if he doesn't try it, then my bishop really belongs on e3, it doesn't belong on d2 here. So, and as I said, knight g4, well, okay, so Knight d5. Bishop d2, knight f4 is interesting. I'm going to have to castle at some point. I could try the knight move here, but then if the queen moves, my knight has to move again, so I just lost a tempo, and then he can capture here, mess up with my pawn structure. So I guess I'll just retreat. If he pushes the pawn, then I can capture with the queen or with the knight. So here, next move could be bishop here. I'm tempted to play this now. If he doesn't capture, I can always retreat back here, challenge the knight, and if he does, I capture with check. The king can move, fine. I can also play my knight here, try to blockade the center. The thing is that g4 is coming, so I have to deal with that too. So let's say g4. The only move would be here, and that's an awful move. I can try to play queen e4, attacking the knight, also kind of hitting the pawn, although not quite. I'll just play h3, and then at some point I'm gonna have to castle, and I think I'll go queenside too. So he can't play h5 right now. Okay, I'm sorry. So candidate moves. Castles. The bishop here is protected by the knight. Bishop takes. Castles here isn't a real candidate. And then bishop f1. Bishop f1 isn't too grand, but I don't think it's that awful. I'll play bishop f1. So I'm gonna have to speed it up now. So I have 3 minutes 42 left to their 9 minutes. So I'm in trouble. And if I don't get to castle soon, I'm never gonna have. I'm never going to get to castle. So I have to castle at some point. And hopefully next move. But the pawns are coming pretty fast. So now, because he blocked my bishop here, he can play the move here. And before he couldn't, because both my bishops and my knights were hitting that square. But now he can actually advance the pawn because it's already protected once. And now my bishop doesn't hit on it anymore. The thing is that if he does that, I think that I can just castle, and then I think I can get away with it. If he plays e5, e5 is interesting. e4, I'm sorry, e4 is interesting. I'm not sure I can capture safely. I could probably capture it with my queen, and then queen takes, knight takes, and then rook e8, and then my knight is pinned to the king, and then probably okay. So I'm just going to castle now. I have to watch for that diagonal now. So let's say at some point if he can play bishop 5, then I'll be in some trouble. I have to do something about the knight here because this pawn is always going to be weak. Either I can try to move my knight and then attack the knight. Okay, so now he's hitting the pawn here. If I move here, then this diagonal becomes dangerous if this ever moves. So let's say I move here, he pushes the pawn. So the plan would be to try to dislodge this, then I could capture. Is it good for them? Probably not. I can always move here. So now I don't know if you've realized, the thing is now that it's hitting the f3 square. So if I ever want to play g3, I have to mind that. It's annoying. I'll just protect the pawn. So I've removed a defender to my rook, so now my rook is only protected by my queen. That's never a good thing. I'd like to play this here, but bishop there. Can I capture the knight? I think I'm gonna have to. So let's say I capture the knight. He takes back with, let's say, the g-pawn. I move here, he pins the knight. I could always capture, I could protect. The knight was very annoying, and also I should know that now this pawn is protected. If he ever tries to capture it with the bishop, it's protected with my queen. I have to be very careful about this diagonal now. You can see that my queen could become pinned to the king. So now my knight will become pinned to the queen, I'm pretty sure. And I have to move 2 pieces in order to get rid of the pin. And not only that, but if I move the 2 pieces, then my knight hangs. Most probably. I could try to play this next move. So if I put my bishop here, this pawn could become weak. Maybe they could try either rook to g8. Do I have anything better? And I should know that I can almost never play this, because if I do this, knight hangs, as I said before. I don't want to play this because then bishop here disproves my move. I'm more worried about this diagonal than I am about this pawn, but you can tell that this position is becoming shaky the more that it goes on. I may have to move my rook, try to protect this pawn at some point, if he ever moves either rook here. And maybe a simple plan for them would be to try to double down on this file and then pile up on this pawn. And it's hard to see how I would protect it, you know, like in a brilliant way. So now I'm thinking about this. So it protects this, and maybe I could try to sack on this. I have very little time left, so something that just came up to me, maybe they could try to sack here. So if they take, I have to take back, and then bishop here could be interesting. Because even if my knight moves, then my rook would be pinned, although right now my queen protects my knight. But I have to watch for it. So I have a threat here, I think, which would be to capture here, and if they take back, then this knight hangs. And also I could try maybe to take here instead with check. And if they move here, then I have all sorts of discoveries with my bishop. And if they move back, let's say here, then I could just go back here with my queen, check, and then win this back, I think. So I have a threat, really. They can never try to play g5 right now, b5 right now, because this pawn hangs. Okay, so they tried it. Maybe it was the lesser of all the evils. Okay, I did not think that this was going to be a possibility. So what's their threat? Let's say I retreat. They can try to put their queen there, threatening both the knights, and then the king. Then I could try to play this here. I'm not sure what just happened. I didn't see this move specifically. I didn't see bishop c4. I didn't think it was interesting. So now my queen and kings are lined up again on this diagonal. That's never a good thing. So this is under attack. And if I play, let's say, this, which is pretty weakening, then they can try to retreat and play this. Well, I'll have to move at some point. I'll try to move my king out of the diagonal. So right now I'm just going to have to play any moves that I can find that make sense. I'm down to my last 10 seconds and it's only 2 seconds per move, so things aren't going too great. A very interesting attack that's going on. I don't know if I can capture back. I don't know if I should capture back. Well, with that amount of time left, what's a guy to do? So okay, so if he takes, I'm probably going to take back with the queen. And if he tries, well, okay. So interestingly enough, the queens are lined up. If I could try to throw in a check, but I can't right now, I'm gonna have to play much faster than that. So maybe I can try to move the queen from that diagonal and then try to throw in a check. So I don't know if this was a good move or not. Probably. Okay, so it's all kinds of messed up now. So is there anything interesting that I can play next? I should try to protect the pawn and then try to move my rook here. So rook here, rook here. So the bishop hangs, by the way, guys. Okay. So here. So you know that this is when you start blundering something. You just don't know how long it's gonna take. So I'll try to move my king up a little bit. should have captured the pawn, I think. So as long as I move on the dark squares, I should be close to fine. So now they can try to put their bishop here, threatening that. I don't know how good of a move that is really, or bad of a move, I don't know. So maybe I can try to sack. Well, okay, so material is pretty equal. So if they move their rook, I can try to move the other rook here, try to pile up on this square. So if they give check, okay. So now the question is, can I convert this into a win? Well, we'll try. But it's kind of hard to see how with so little time left. And by the way, I suck in endgames. So what I would try to do is try to bring my king here so that this is attacked. It's hard to see how. Yeah, okay. So I'm not making any progress here. So I can't pin the pawn yet. So this looks like a draw to me. Maybe it shouldn't have been, but I'm so low on time that, you know. So I have to be careful also not to lose my rook. That would be... Okay, I'll just take the draw then. So let's try to see what happened. So this, again, I think that this is a weird opening. I'm not even sure if it has a name. It probably does. I don't know what it is. Then I decided not to exchange the knights. If we did exchange the knights, then I thought that they could capture with the pawn, and I thought that would simply help their development while I lost quite a few moves in order to try to move the knight. The thing that would have been interesting had I captured the knight is that then this diagonal here would have been I could have hit that diagonal with the queen. In this type of positions, I guess the g6 and bishop g7 wouldn't be so bad. And then also I should know that this diagonal is sometimes interesting is if they have a pawn there. So if they have a pawn there that's unprotected, this diagonal is interesting. Right now everything is kind of closed, so I just retreated and then they opened up. So here I captured. I thought that they would capture back. I thought about exchanging queens, but instead they decided to play their queen there. So they blocked in their bishop. I don't think that this is a good setup for black, but it didn't turn out too bad for them. So here, as I said during the game, I was afraid that at some point they were gonna castle long and that, you know, their rook would be lined up with my queen, and you never want to do that. And in this position, it's very hard to see where my queen could actually go. So if my queen, let's say my bishop moves, I could try to move my queen there. But it's, you know, it's in the air, it's coming. So you have to think about it. So then I just moved my queen, and then they castled long. Here I was trying to develop my bishop because it was the only piece that wasn't developed yet. I'm not sure that this was the best move. Maybe I should try to put it to e3 already, because h6 is obviously coming, and you know they're gonna have no trouble pushing the pawns in front of my possibly my king, and because their king is so far away. So maybe I'm just asking for trouble. And also, when I retreated, I thought about the move knight g4 here. I thought about retreating here, and then at some point play h3 so that the bishop couldn't hit that knight. But they played the knight here instead, which I hadn't thought about at all. So I didn't mention it in the game, but at some point here, they could have tried to sack something. So, you know, they have so many pieces lined up here, like it hitting that square specifically, that it could have been interesting. The only thing, though, is that because their king is now on the queen side, this opens up my queen, my rooks could pile up at some point, let's say here. So I'm not sure whether it could have been feasible at some point. And also, you know, their king is there, so if they ever try to push some pawns here, they're gonna have some air in front of their king, so it's never comfortable. In the meantime, I have to think about these moves. You know, this move, some type of knight move here, which happened in the game. My king is wide open now. It's still in the center. I have to castle at some point. So I'm thinking about this. Here the pawn was weak, so I castled. So now the only thing is that my two knights are very far away from all the action, and also my queen is never going to be on a nice diagonal. So you can see here that both my king and my queen are aligned, and this has been true for like the majority of the game. So it's never good to have such a threat looming on you all the time. So we just exchanged a few things, and now I think I was very, very, very short on time. And here they sacked. I have no clue whether it's good or not. They played their bishop there. I'm not I don't really get that. Although this knight becomes very weak. Oops. So we played this, and then the pawn was threatened, and then so they would try to maneuver their bishop here. And the rest was played so fast and so quick, it's very hard at this point to see what happened. So here they took control of the file, but I think that this move could have been good. Oh no, you know what? They can't capture the pawn here, because if they do, then I could try to play the knight check here, and once they take back, then I have queen takes bishop check. And their attack is pretty much dead, although they've won a pawn. So I play this here. This seems weak, but at the same time, it's hard to see how they can. Let's say, so they captured, I captured back. But let's say they don't capture. Let's say they play queen here instead. Is there anything that I can do that's interesting? I can try to push the pawn, but then they can take this pawn here, and my knight is attacked. So a simple combination would be queen here, I push, they take, I take, they capture back, and then I have doubled pawns. The queen is awkward in this spot, and then they've lost this bishop, which is pretty good because it keeps my knights honest. And also I should note that I'm up material here, so it's not in their best interest to try to trade material. So all of this was played very quickly. I don't know here if I could have played something like knight h2. Try to force a trade maybe. Knight h2 again, in the hope that the queen leaves the defense of this bishop so that I can try to swoop in a knight check and then capture back. It didn't happen this way, and then they sacrificed again. So now I'm up 3 pawns. So I'm up a piece, really. The equivalent of a piece. Although it's more of a rook for 2 pawns. Here I sack back. If my rook moves, this falls, and if my rook retreats, then this pawn is just it's awful, and then this diagonal is open. So I quickly sacked. I had no choice, by the way. It's nothing too nice. So here what saved me is that this bishop is hanging. Here I feel like this pawn I should have tried to attack. I was hoping for some types of checkmate, so maybe I should have tried this move instead. If I put my rook here, then I have a threat. My threat would be to checkmate on the back rank. And also if they try to move back, then I simply capture. I should have tried that. I didn't. I wanted to protect this pawn instead. And here also, so just a reminder, I was very low on time. I should have tried this maybe. If they ever try to push the pawn, then they've basically locked their king on the back rank, or they've tied their bishop to the walk of their king, if you will. So here again I was very low on time. Here I should have tried to play this move. I was trying to play quick, and also I was afraid that they could throw in a bishop, so they would hit both the rook and the c2 square. And then in this position, maybe it's won, maybe I didn't play it well. I'm gonna have to analyze it on my own and see where I could have won. So that's it, guys. So a draw. I'm happy with the results. It could have been much worse, especially given the time that I've taken. If we look, let's go at the analysis board and let's see the move times here, which would be interesting to see. So I'm white here. So you see, I took almost 3 minutes on my 10th move. So by the 10th move, I had like, I don't know, like 4 minutes left. And the game lasted for 62 moves. So you can tell that I was in a bit of a rush afterwards. So you can see that most of my moves were very quick at the end. So, but anyway, so that's it. Come back at some point. I'm not playing regularly now, but you can follow and then you'll get a notification if I ever play again. And so I guess I'll try to play like on a daily basis, every night of the week or something. And so that's it. Have a good one.